everybody. Happy Thursday morning. It is early. 7 a.m. is early. I'm happy to be here with the Live Sales and Crafting Down South Live Crafting Day. If you are joining me live, you can shoot me a comment and let me know that you are here. If you're catching me on a replay, you can do the same. Just hashtag replay and let me know that you are here and say hi. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments or you can message me anything specific. I'm going to try and pull up my comments on my phone. I know it is early, so I'm not sure how many of you will be popping on this morning, but I will be making a fake style rustic apple galette, which is basically it's a pie that you form without a pan. So it's just a pie that you form and plop down on a plate, and it's rustic style. You fold in the crust, and it doesn't require sort of a free form thing. It doesn't require a pan. So galettes are pretty popular around the holidays, around between really Halloween and Christmas. You see lots of rustic galettes on things. Good morning, Peggy. How are you? I'm a little hoarse this morning, so excuse my little grovelly voice. I'll do the best I can. I'm certainly not used to being live this early, for sure. 2 o'clock in the afternoon is my typical time, so 7 a.m. is a little early for me, but I'll get used to it. It'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I think there's a few people on now, so I will go ahead. I have done some prep work ahead of time, just so that I can show you sort of start to finish how this is going to work. But the first thing that I'm going to use, now you can use foam clay for this as well. I use Model Magic for most of my realistic fake food creations, just because I feel like it holds its shape a little bit better. It doesn't shrink quite as much. It doesn't shrink hardly at all, honestly. Having a coffee. Oh, I'm jealous. I forgot to bring my coffee in here, so I don't have one. This hour of the morning, yes, coffee is where it's at, for sure. So Model Magic, you have to condition just a little bit more than foam clay. It is stiffer, a little more on the rubbery side. You need to warm it up, give it a good, usually at least 5 minutes of pull time in the summer, a little bit more in the wintertime when it's colder. Hello, Marianne. You got your happy mail. Yay. I'm so happy. It's good to know when things arrive and they arrive in good condition. I've had so much damage with UPS lately. I'm so frustrated with them. I've had to put in a number of claims for damage on things that I'm shipping, and it's annoying. So I actually switched back to the post office just because of all the UPS damage recently. So I'm hoping that I have a little better luck. You just never know week to week who's gonna do it right and who's gonna run over the box. So I'm not getting any breakage. Usually if you pull this and you get like a nice taffy sort of stretch on this, I know it's not going to crack when it's drying. That's kind of what you want to achieve, that nice taffy stretch. If you get it and it snaps in half, you need to keep going with your kneading. Just sort of pretend like you're making homemade bread, and you just, there, I got a pop there. So that means that part of that clay is subject to cracking if I don't warm it up more and keep kneading. Hello, Pamela and Tina. Good morning. I hope you guys are enjoying coffee or tea or something yummy for an early breakfast. I think I'm starting to get hungry, honestly, and I never eat this early, but my stomach is saying, hello, I'm here. I think it just wants more coffee. I'll have to get some later. So to make, what we're making today is a rustic style. It's called a galette. It is a panless pie, basically. It has an open space on the top, but the pie is formed, basically you just make a pie crust pretty much like you would in any other pie crust, only you leave it a little bit thicker. These are very popular in Europe, and they've really caught on in recent years in, good morning, Cece, how's your back, hon? I hope you're feeling better. These have really caught on in recent years in the United States, and people make them in all different flavors, which is pretty neat. Pretty popular around the holidays, especially for, you know, the primitive style bakers. I'm not sure that I've seen anyone actually make a fake one of these. I'm sure somebody has, but I don't think I've seen it. But whether you're making this for real or for fake, as a fake, as a dupe, as a prop, you want to leave your crust a little bit thicker than you would a normal pie crust because it has no pan. You have to form it just by hand. So if you were using a real pie crust, you definitely wouldn't want this to break, which if anybody's ever made pies, you know that pie crusts can be a little fickle. You tear holes in them and then you have to squish them back in the pan and all that. They can be kind of a pain. Same holds true if you're making crust for a galette. Like I said, you want to leave it thicker. Now this is a little bit too thick, but I'm going to size this. I'm going to do sort of like a two-person galette, like with 2 servings, not a full size. You can make these any size. You can make them as big as like a 10-inch pie. And that's a lot of times what you'll see in recipe videos. You'll see them make a larger one. But for space and, you know, just demonstration purposes, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. More like this. I did this 2 days ago, and I went ahead and just let it dry completely so that I could show you how to color the crust and how to fill the crust and so forth. So this is more like a, you know, 2-serving kind of thing. You cut it in half and share it with somebody. So this is a 5-inch, just a little metal pan that I'm using to help me form my crust. I need to make sure, because what we're going to do is we're going to fold up these sides around, leaving the hole in the middle where we can see the filling. So I'm going to use this as a form to make that about that size. So I'm just going to take my fingers here. I'm not going to worry too much about the rolling pin right now, but I just want to make this a larger circle, and I'm using my pan upside down just to show me how much I have. And I'm just very gently sort of pinching and stretching out my clay. And I may have it a little too thick this time, but I think it's fine because galettes typically have a much thicker crust than a regular pie. Some galettes can be made with puff pastry, which is more of a flaky pastry. You can find recipes for all of it if you want to try this for real, if you're a real baker. So I have it probably, this is a 5-inch, and I've stretched my clay out another 2 inches all the way around. So I have about a 7-inch circle for this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a pair of scissors. Good morning, Jill. And I'm going to snip parts of this crust, maybe about every 2 or 2.5 inches around. It doesn't have to be too specific. This is just going to help us fold it up around it and make that signature rustic pie or galette look. So I'm going to take my little pan off. Hi Wendy, good morning. I'm going to take my little pan off because, well, maybe I'll leave it there for just a minute. I think I did for the other one. We're going to take these sides now that we've clipped them, and I'm going to kind of fold them just slightly over each other like this, just slightly, and bring it up on this pan. And I want to make sure that I've got a decent seal. I don't want to smash it, kind of like you would do with a normal pie crust, but this is clay. But I want to seal it because I'm going to use a little bit of, you can use resin or silicone glue for this one to do your filling. So I'm just going to kind of cross each one over a little bit and bring them up and make that signature galette look. But I'm keeping in mind to seal this little place at the bottom. So I'm going to bring all of this up, crisscross this one. That's another nice thing about Model Magic is it doesn't stick quite as aggressively as foam clay does. Hello Heidi, good morning. Hi Priscilla. I think it's Priscilla. Crafty Ladies, aren't you Priscilla? I'm pretty sure you are. I watched you the other day, I should know this. So now I need to get my pan out, which I should have done before I folded that last flap, but I forgot. I'm going to pull my pan out, and then I'm going to just sort of bring this back in like I had it. And I have some pieces of crumpled foil. I just sort of made them in little rounded stick versions here. And I'm going to prop up the sides of my galette. Like so. And I just want to make sure that I'm getting it formed so that this clay can dry overnight. And then I will have this nice and dry, and I'm able to paint it. So for this one, you really are going to have to let it dry before you do anything else to it. But that is basically how you would form a galette. Now I will go around and check to make sure that all these little corners down here where I clipped it with the scissors, I want to make sure that they're all pinched together and sealed, because when I pour resin in here or my silicone glue, either one, I don't want it to leak out. So you need to make sure that you're pretty diligent about sealing your little edges down below there. But that's basically how you form this rustic little pie. And if you're doing this for real, before you fold up your edges, you would put your fruit filling in it, then you'd clip and fold your edges over it. So, like I said, you can find lots of recipes for this if you want to try it for real. It's really a cute thing to do around the holidays because you can decorate these nicely. You can make them personal size, you can make them a little bigger like this, like a two-person sort of thing, or you can do them full size. The 10 inches, you know, is the most popular size at the holidays because you always have a lot of people eating it. Let's see. I'll put that out of the way. So that's the forming of the galette. So for painting it, I use pretty much the same thing I use for all of my pie crusts, which is a raw sienna. Any brand will do. Ginger, hey, how are you? Good morning. The raw sienna is a really nice crust color for pies and other baked goods. This is the Amsterdam. This is the the Michaels brand, but like any brand is fine. These are the professional style paints. I use them a lot more than craft paint just because the color is a little more vibrant and they are thicker. They go a little bit further, I think, anyway. And I feel like I can control what I'm doing with it a little bit better. So I'm just going to take a small amount. You don't need much. Hold the lid pin up. And I use a very soft, these are brushes by Princeton. This is the Neptune series. It is extremely soft. It's almost as soft as a makeup brush. And I really like these for doing pie crust painting because I don't leave any brush strokes behind. The makeup sponges, they kind of look like a teardrop. They're very dense. Those are really good for doing pie crusts as well. And you can use a sort of a pouncing technique for it. You also don't leave brush strokes, and it's great for shading and fading and all that. So either one. But when you're doing crust, it's really good to find you a nice soft, really soft brush. So I'm going to start by getting a little water on this brush. Now with these soft brushes, they really soak up the water. So you kind of have to dab some of it off before you start, or you'll get puddles. But you want to make sure when you're picking up your paint that you take the time to spread it out a little and don't put too much color on your brush. If you do, try and get it off a little bit. Hey, Robin. So then you're going to want to do very light strokes. And you don't necessarily want to get into all the crevices all at once. Start with some basic shading just on the top and then color it as you go along. Because we're probably going to switch to a little bit darker color. Thank you for sprinkling, Jill. Or I guess that was Robin. Probably going to switch to a little bit darker color. I'm sorry, guys. It's early. I know, Ginger, you're used to doing this early. I am not. I am not a morning person. This is friggin' early. Not going to lie. So, like I said, I'm probably going to go over this with a slightly darker color just because this is like a full crust, and when you bake this in the oven, it's going to get darker than normal. The normal crust that, sometimes you have to cover your outer crust or it just gets really, really dark. Well, with the galette, it's pretty much all crust. So it's going to get a little bit darker than a normal pie. So I'll probably switch to a more chocolate brown color to go over the top of this to give it a little bit more oomph. That's a word, right? Oomph. I think I could use a little more oomph this morning. A double caffeinated coffee would be great. Oh. I am going to do, and it's sort of optional, however you're going to display this, it's sort of optional with painting the bottoms of these. It's whatever you want to do, however you're going to display this. You definitely don't have to if you're using this glued to a plate or a platter or something like that, or if you're doing a vignette where you have it sort of pasted down. You don't have to paint the bottom. I do for most of my stuff that's not going to be glued down, just for sealant purposes, just to seal that clay. But like I said, that's totally optional depending on what you're going to do. I am going to take, this is a raw umber. I'm sure you guys know this paint color. It is the darkest chocolatey color you can find without going black. The only thing I don't like about these tubes is they collect these funky dried pieces that you have to pick off. It drives me crazy. So I'm going to get a little bit of that. Good morning, Eliza. I didn't see you sneak in. I'm going to wash my brush off and dab off some of that water. Hi, Tisha. Good morning, good morning. Good Thursday. And then I'm going to dot some of that paint off because this is a super dark color and I don't want to add too much at once. Good night, Maria. It might be a little bit dark, so I'm going to wash some of that off. If you get it too dark, just wash your brush, especially with the Model Magic. This is easy enough to do. You can wash your brush off and you can pick that color right back up off of what you were doing for the most part. So I just want to shade this over just a little bit with this darker color. I just don't want too much. I especially want it around the areas that is going to get a little more crispy looking if we were baking this, which would be the raised areas. I might actually switch to a burnt umber, which is the lighter chocolate color. So we'll try all three and see which one looks better. Let's pick up a little of this. You can also use, that looks better actually. I like that one better. You can use makeup to shade these. You can use soft pastels. I think I like that color better. Let's see if I can get any more of that paint out of there. I appreciate that, Tisha. So I'm going to go mainly in the raised areas with this. We switched to the more regular chocolate brown because that is pretty. I'm just going to swipe my brush over that and get that nice golden baked look. That looks nice. That's a little more golden baked. Now I'm going to go back and concentrate on some of the areas that are down in these little holes because I want to shade them a little bit. But you notice I didn't pick up any more paint before I did that because I don't want those holes to be really dark. I want them to be lighter like they would be when you bake because your oven will toast. I always say it toasts the mountains before it toasts the valleys, if that makes sense. And this does look a little darker in person than it does on the thing here. It really is a darker color for sure. But you do, when you're doing this, you do whatever you think looks most natural when you're painting. And then when you feel like you have it, just stop. Don't do too much. So I've washed my brush off. Now I will zhuzh this crust up. Zhuzh is a word. In a little bit. But we're going to go on here to, I think I'm going to get rid of this for right now. One nice thing about having a tile is I can clean up quickly and then I don't end up putting my arm in the paint. Which is pretty typical for me. I don't know if you guys remember Messy Marvin from the 1970s television commercials, Messy Marvin. I think I was Messy Marvin's sister. Because if there is a mess to be made, Andy is going to make it for sure. Whether she's cooking or anything else, she's going to make a mess. So you can make, like I said, galettes can come in any pie flavor that you want to make it. It can make, I'm going to do apple. You can make pear, which is very popular. Any kind of berry, mixed berry galettes are pretty popular. Cranberry galettes around Christmas time, very popular. So any of that will work. I form my apples, and when I'm doing regular apple pies that I sell in my Etsy shop, I form every apple slice to build the pie. I make it extraordinarily realistic as best as I can. Not, I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but that's not what I meant. I just meant I feel like forming your own apples in regular apple shapes, like if you were actually baking it, is the best way to simulate the best fake realistic. I don't know. These are like oxymoron ×2 in my sentences this morning. You know what I'm trying to say, though, I hope. But forming actual apple slices or apple chunks even, and putting them in. When I started off making fake pies, I was doing the sponge technique where you chop up the yellow sponges and then you kind of shade them a little bit darker and stuff them in there. And that was great when I started. But then I realized that if I actually took the time to make apple slices like they look like apple slices, it just took it to the next level. It made it that much more realistic. So as far as most of my berry pies, my apple pies, especially my blueberry pies, I roll every single blueberry that goes in my pie. I don't smush, colored clay in there and try and make it look like a blueberry pie that's all jumbled together. I form my fruit pieces, and I found that people like it better. I sell a ton of pies, like a ton of pies, and I get a lot of really good reviews on it. Yes, James Pretty, my wonderful husband, I did not have my second cup, so yeah. Am I talking in riddle and rhyme? That's just me. I do it whether I've had coffee or not. So, to form now a galette, you typically don't peel your fruit. This is a rustic, throw together kind of pie. So whether you're doing pears or apples or anything like that, you will see skin on your galette. Typically. I mean, you don't have to. If you hate apple skin or pear skin or anything like that, and you're making this for real, just peel it. But for realistic purposes for this fake item, I did want apples to look like they had skin on them. So when I made my apple pieces, I did like Granny Smith kind of skin on here. I do use foam clay for most of my fake fruit kind of things. You can use probably the best colors that I can tell you. If you have a light mocha and you have a white, mix together probably 25% of the mocha and 75% of the white, and you'll end up with something that's like when you first cut into an apple, it's very cream colored, little bit of a yellow, and then as it sits there for a minute, it like immediately starts to brown when it hits the air, unless you pour lemon juice on it immediately. And you still have some browning even with lemon juice. But this seems to be a pretty decent combination to get that apple flesh color. If you're making pear, then do about 10 or 15% light mocha and then the rest white, so that you have, because pears don't brown as quickly as apples do, and they're a lighter flesh. So depending on what you're doing is how much white you want to put in there to get your color. But a light mocha and a white will get you a pretty decent apple color. To form the apple, I do about a 1 inch, and they don't have to be perfect. They don't all have to be the same. So between 3/4 inch and 1 inch little balls is what I will roll. I'll try and get the, get the air out of it. Now what I do to form these guys is I'll put the ball down and I'll start to flatten it and elongate it at the same time. So I'll sort of pinch it together and then I'll flatten it out a little, and then pinch it together and flatten it out a little. So I end up with something that looks like this. And then I'll start to curve the edges down. So I'll pull it down like that, keeping it pretty flat, but I keep it almost probably 1/3 of an inch thick, I guess. With a pear, you'll want to flatten it out more and make it longer because it's just the way pears are. But I'll flatten this out and bring the bottoms, and then I'll push up in the center. So I have something that looks like this and about that thick. So that's how I form my apple pieces. It doesn't take long. It's a little tedious, but if you're doing a regular pie in a pie pan, this is something that you can sort of mindlessly sit and do while you're watching TV or anything like that. So if you're putting together a bunch of fruit pies for craft shows or to sell or give away to your friends or whatever, you can always take your clay, mix it all up, and just sit with a piece of parchment paper on a pan and watch TV and make your fruit slices and let them dry overnight, and voila, you got it. So that's how I do the apple slices. Now for this size galette, you don't need very many, for sure, because this is, it's a small little area that I did in this one. You don't have to fold your sides in quite as much as I did. For the larger ones, you'll get a bigger space in the middle, obviously, than these smaller ones. But you can make this, you're opening any size that you want. To make it look like a green apple, like a Granny Smith, I used a color called light olive green. This is the Hobby Lobby Master's Touch brand. I don't know if you can see the name on there, but it's light olive green. Looks just like a Granny Smith. And I'm just going to take a very small tipped paintbrush. I'm not even going to blot this out because I'm just doing the one. And I just put a little paint on there. Now you can paint foam clay. I know most of you don't, but for instances like this, you can. And I do all the time. I paint it all the time. And I just take a little bit of paint with a wet paintbrush, not too wet, and I just rub it along the top, just like where the skin would be, and voila, that's all you need, that's all you got. Let your paint dry because you don't want it rubbing off on the inside of your crust that you just nicely shaded. Good morning, Sam, how are you? Boy, it's early for you. Hi, Holly. I was thinking it was early for me. It's way earlier for you, Sam. So I guess I have 8 pieces here. I'm not sure that I can even get 8 pieces in here because this is such a small galette opening. If I make pecan galettes, even for real, I will have less crust overlay. Because, I make them bigger, and I have most of that overlay on the side. But if you Google these things, you can kind of see what I'm talking about as far as sizes go. In this case, size probably doesn't matter. So just saying. And you can double fruit these. I had made, actually JR made these for me the other day. He made me some blackberries. He made me a mold that's a really good mold, and he made me some resin blackberries. You could do a mixed fruit. You could do an apple blackberry, which I may do. I'm not sure. Let's see about filling this puppy. Now I'm going to use either silicone glue or resin. I think I'm probably going to use resin, but this silicone glue works just fine. You can buy this on Amazon, and you can mix paint, alcohol ink, or a variety of other pigments. Mica powders work fine with it. It's a great alternative to resin, so you don't have to use resin for this if you don't want to. Now with a galette, typically you will lay the fruits in a pattern, because that's what makes it look pretty. And I'm going to see if I can tuck these suckers in there and make it look that way. I think I can. I think I can. Maybe I will use all these. Don't like this one. I have to move this one over and put this one in. And then I think we'll be in business. Now with these foam clay apples, I just made these about an hour ago and painted them. So they're not super dry, but they're not super wet either. But I kind of tucked them in there in a little bit of a pattern. Let's see if I added a couple of blackberries in here, what it would be. I don't know if I can get that down in there. I can. So you can kind of experiment with different little fruits that you have and see what you come up with. Because like I said, you can do these in a variety of different fruits, and you know, you can cut basically whatever you do a pie with, you can do for this, is what I was trying to say. So you could do blackberries in here as well. I'm not sure that I'm crazy about that, so I think I'm going to take my blackberries out and just leave apples. But you could do it. I think I just like the apples. I think that looks much better. So when I'm making my regular pies, I typically, at this point, when I get the fruit in the pie filling, I'll take a little bit of real cinnamon. You can use real cinnamon anytime you need to in fake baking. It's a natural bug repellent. When you dump out cinnamon, you will have clumpy parts. So I usually put it in something or on something, and I'll just take my finger and I'll sort of expel those little clumps so that I don't get big clumps when I go to put it in whatever I'm putting it in. And I just sort of make it stick to my finger. I just sort of press my finger on it, and then I rub my other finger with it, so that I just get small little dustings of the cinnamon and not big clumpies, if that makes sense. So I put some cinnamon in there, which will make it look even more realistic, because you always cinnamon sugar your apple kind of thing when you're making the pies. Then I'm going to go in for the resin. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to do something else, because I wanted to put some nuts in this. Now these are nuts that I am going to be releasing as part of the PropChef line next week. They are resin. Oh, I keep forgetting which camera to go to, sorry. These are resin instead of the pet bedding like we're all used to using. These are hard resin two different colors. One is more like a toasted color, and this is more like a plain nut. They are hard. They are resin. They are not the pet bedding. I like them much better. They're much more realistic, and they are paintable. So you can put paint in them, like I did here. I made pistachios, which is something that I use on a lot of different things that I have. All you do is put the nuts in a little cup, you put a little paint in it, you swirl it around, you let it dry, and you have whatever nuts you want. If you want to add a darker brown, you've got almonds. If you want the green, you've got pistachios. Way easier to use and way more realistic than the pet bedding that we're all used to using. So these will be coming out next week if you're interested in any fake nuts. I am going to use some of these regular ones, and I'm just going to sprinkle them just a little bit on top of my apples because I want this to be a nutty apple pie, or galette, I guess I should say. And I'm just going to put those in there. I really like these nuts. I'm really glad I found them because they are way more realistic. I really like them. Okay, so I have the nuts in. I gotta put my gloves on because I'm getting ready to use resin. And like I said, the silicone glue works just fine for this. Actually, I have learned recently that you can use clear school glue for some of these items as well. Clear school glue can be colored with food coloring, it can be colored with paint, or resin pigments. The alcohol ink doesn't do very well in it, but the regular pigment does. Mica powders will also swirl really nicely in clear school glue. So that's another alternative that you can use. Just make sure that before you let your crust dry, and check it after it is dry to make sure that you don't have anything cracking anywhere that your resin is going to roll out of here. So I have a quick resin. It's not the quickest resin, but it is a quick resin. This is your nuts for the nuts. Puduo, I guess, Puduo, however you say that, Puduo. This is a quick resin. It's a two-part, equal part A and B. Sets up a little bit quicker than the regular. The JB Weld is the quickest. It sets up the fastest, but man, it stinks. It smells like crazy, and I hate using it. So I prefer something a little bit better than this. I probably should have mixed this up ahead of time because it probably would have been better to have it sit and thicken just a little bit, but I forgot. So we're just going with it. Get these little caps off. So I am using a scale, which is what I recommend for this. I just have a tiny cup because I just need a tiny bit of this. I'm just sort of going to glaze the top. I'm not going to saturate the whole thing because you're not really going to see it anyway. So I'm probably just going to do about an ounce of this. So I'll do a half an ounce of each one. I will never be able to do that again. That was exactly half an ounce. I got it right on the money. And then I'll do a half ounce of B. Oh, come on. Okay, there we are, 1 ounce. And I need a small popsicle stick. Put my cap back on. I like these little drip caps. That's a good idea. And I love the pump style resin because you can be way more accurate with it. I like that they've started doing that. Get my scale over here. Now you have to mix this. It says for like 3 minutes, but this is such a small amount, I'm not going to do it for 3 minutes. I'll do it less than that. And I know Cece is watching. And if Rolf, if you're watching, I know I'm supposed to do it for 3 minutes. Rolf is an expert resin mixer. And he is meticulous. He doesn't get any air bubbles, which I always do. And he always mixes for the proper amount of time. I usually set my timer over here to make sure that I mix it good enough. I usually at least do 2 minutes. Good morning, Tammy, the Fake Bake Diaries. Have I seen you before? I don't think I've seen you before. Or have I, and I just don't know the business name. So after I get this all mixed up, my favorite apple pie color, of course you have to use a yellow. I like the dandelion very well. You can use a dandelion and like a drop of brown to get it that sort of color. Or recently I found another brand of alcohol inks that has some other colors in it. This one is called Golden. It's a really nice brownish gold color. It's a perfect apple pie sauce color, and I don't have to mix any colors. So I like this one a lot, and I found these on Amazon. There's actually like 25 different companies on Amazon that you can buy alcohol inks from. Let's Resin makes a 36 pack that has so many different colors in it. It's really, really a good pack, and it's not expensive. But there's a couple others that are assorted color sets. So if you're looking for something inexpensive in the alcohol inks, go for one of the sets because you get so many different colors. And you can really mix them together and make new colors, and it's a pretty good value, I think, because they are not seriously expensive. All right, so I shook that. I'm going to put some of this golden in there. I'm going to do about 10 drops, I think. I'm going to get that mixed in. I'm not sure how well you can see this, especially with my purple gloves. It's probably distorting it a little bit. I don't know why I keep buying these purple gloves. I just think they're pretty. I've seen people with pink gloves, but I can't find them. I like pink anything. Now, like I said, you don't have to use resin for this. Silicone glue works just as good. This is the kind by Basic, B-A-Z-I-C is this one. Let me see if I can get the glare off of that. This one is, you can get it on Amazon. They come in 2 packs on Amazon, and it works, it sets up really fast. Within like an hour, it'll be set up. It's a little more difficult to get the bubbles out of the silicone glue. So you have to be careful if you're making sauces that will go on a plate, you know, like a hollandaise or something like that. You can get the bubbles a lot easier with the silicone glue than you can with the resin. Now, I'm not saying the resin doesn't have bubbles in it for sure, but when you're pouring it, it sort of expels the bubbles and you don't see them. I use resin most of the time in my fruit pie fillings. I'm just gonna, typically I would let this rest for about half an hour before I put it on here, at least like 20 minutes just to thicken up. But because I didn't pour this ahead of time, I'm just gonna have to go ahead and do it. And what I get, I get. I just want to make sure that everything is coated pretty well to where it looks, it's sort of, I want it to deceive the eye to make this look like it's full of apples and filling, which it's not. It's going to be mostly just a few clay on top and a little bit of this resin here, and that's about it. So 1 ounce was perfect for this size for sure. Now I checked it for holes before I painted it. If you have a hole that you need to repair, you can also repair it with the silicone glue. You can repair it with just a little bit of clay and then just let it dry again. Hi, Maritza. Repair your holes before you pour that resin because you don't want anything leaking out from underneath it, for sure. But now what I'm going to do, and this, I would let my resin dry before I did this step. I take a glaze. This is a gloss varnish from Liquitex. This is the gloss, and it's what I prefer to use on the outsides of the pies because typically when you make a pie, and not everybody does this, you know, if they're doing it just for their house or whatever, but you'll take an egg white wash, egg whites and a little bit of water, and you'll brush it on your crust, and it makes it all nice and glossy and shiny and pretty and official looking. You know, when you're baking for the holidays, you want everything to look just so. So this gloss varnish gives it that appearance. And sometimes if I'm not going to sugar my crust, which again, that's I usually do when I'm selling my pies, I do sugar my crusts. I sell a whole line of sugars that are fake that you can use for this purpose. They come in colors, they come in candy varieties. Once I get some of this, this is my regular old table sugar. It's a product that's made primarily of pulverized glass. It does look like real sugar, like you have in your kitchen. I will use this with this gloss varnish, and I'll go along just a little bit every time I put some varnish on. I'll stop and put a little sugar on so that it sticks. And then after all that is dry and before it gets shipped, I will take a gloss acrylic spray and I'll spray the whole thing down just to set it in so that none of the sugar falls off. So that's how I do mine. I got away from painting Mod Podge over the top of these things, and I've switched to the varnish. This varnish is not sticky, where sometimes, depending on your heat and humidity levels, Mod Podge can remain sticky for a really long time, and when you're trying to ship product, you don't want it sticking to things. Trust me on that. Had it happen, don't want to go there again. So I switched to this gloss varnish, and then I spray seal it at the end just to make sure that nothing falls off, and it's working out beautifully. So I can highly recommend this Liquitex product. I am not a Liquitex rep or anything like that for sure, but I do appreciate a lot of their products. They do have some quality stuff, and this is one of them that I swear by, because while I use Mod Podge for a lot of things, the final finish is not one of them anymore because I've just had too many problems. So I'm going to finish sugaring this crust, and I'm going to drop some right in the middle on my apples and my nuts here, just to give it that little sparkle. And then I may, I'm not sure, I don't know if I should put a little cinnamon on the crust as well. Maybe I'll put just a pinch of that. Now, I need to tell you who is coming up after me, and I don't have that up on my screen, and I don't know. Let me see. I don't know that. Why don't I know that? I'm so bad about this. Let me see if I can find this. I'm just sprinkling just a pinch of cinnamon around this crust area, and just a little bit more on the apples. Now that I have that resin in there, I'm going to put just a little bit more. So that is, now this is wet and it's full of resin, but I'm going to get it up here. My color looks a little bit off on the camera. I think it's because it's sitting on this brown paper. Let me get it off of that. No, that didn't help much. It does look baked, I promise. It's a much browner color than what you're seeing on the screen. But that is basically how you make a fake galette. And like I said, you can do it in any fruit color. Does anybody know who's coming up? It's Ginger? Okay. Glitzy Creations by Ginger, coming up in like 3 minutes. Thank you, Tisha. I appreciate that. I need to have this up on the screen, and I don't. I'll get better. So, if anybody has any questions on how to do these, you can send me a message. You can leave me a comment here. Duraclear varnishes. I think I have some Duraclear too, but it's not, I think I have it's an iridescent one that I've used from Duraclear. I like their stuff too. Yeah, I think they're probably pretty similar. So if you're used to using Duraclear, I think that's just fine. And like I said, it sticks the sugar fabulously, and it's it's not sticky. And that's my big thing, was the Mod Podge was just remaining, because being in South Carolina, we have that weird humidity thing, and my stuff was just being very tacky, and I didn't like it. So this varnish holds it together, and the spray on top of it just holds the sugar down, and it's a wonderful compliment. So there you go, your realistic apple galette. If you have any questions about making one, you can let me know. I will post pictures of this later so that you can see. And if you're interested in the nuts, I'll be back next week. Those will be for sale with lots of other new items that are coming out. So everybody pop on over to Glitzy Creations by Ginger, and let's watch and see what she has for here for today's craft. I can't wait. So I thank everybody for joining me. Thanks to the Live Sales and Crafting Down South group, and I appreciate you letting me come on and make things. So I will see you guys next time. Thanks everybody. Have a great day. Bye.